Hello viewers. Today in this video we are going to talk about a very important aspect of academic writing and research publication, which deals with how to prepare footnotes and references, what methodology we use while we are reading, researching and writing a research paper. As a reader, your relationship with the text that you are reading is a very dynamic one. You are constantly reacting to the text. While you are reading, your mind is simultaneously engaged with analyzing, interpreting, and understanding the text, while at the same time, you are craving for more information and feedback, even as you are reading it. This is where the role of footnotes and references come into play. To address this need for more information, hunger for more knowledge, seeking wider explication, the scholar resorts to the usage of footnotes and references. In this lecture, we will look at some of the purposes of footnotes and notes, also referred to as endnotes, their usage, and then draw the very important distinction between notes and footnotes. To proceed with an understanding of the two and why at all they are needed in a piece of scholarly writing, let us first look at and define what academic writing is, distinguish it from non-academic writing, and why the requirement of notes and footnotes arise in it. Let us philosophically look at why one is propelled to write. There are a variety of answers to that. We write in order to express and articulate our innermost feelings and beliefs, things that we deeply and passionately feel and care about. It could be about life and the world in general, and sometimes we want to dispassionately compose our thoughts and ideas critically in a structured manner by marshalling the years of knowledge and learning that we have accumulated in life. The former piece of writing is governed by heart, the latter by mind. Although the two cannot be straitjacketed, sometimes they do overlap and intermingle. Examples of this hybrid entity that one can think of are the historical novels of Hilary Mantel and Philippa Gregory. Their account of the history of Tudor England is not only an imaginative piece of writing, it also gives ample evidence of meticulous research and their scholarship, which are reflected in the comprehensive list of bibliography that they provide at the end of their novels. Yet, they belong to the category of non-academic writing because their subject matter is of general interest and their writings are intended for mass consumption. They may be subjective, personal, and emotional in nature, which is in contrast to the specialized academic writing, which focuses on the specific academic subject and is targeted for a learned and informed audience. The hallmark of academic writing is clarity, specificity and preciseness of argument. Your concept, ideas, or hypotheses are cogently conveyed through well-structured, concise statements. Your arguments are supported by evidence and accurate references to the works of authors that you have consulted. The purpose of academic writing is to contribute to the reader's knowledge, growth, and awareness. Where non-academic writing uses informal tone, academic writing is serious and formal in its presentation. The language and tone of academic writing is marked by a certain gravitas and sobriety, leaving no room for frivolity. The arguments are logically, precisely, and coherently expressed. This kind of writing appears in the form of books, reviews, reports, essays, journal articles, conference presentations, research papers, and dissertations. Although this is by no means an exhaustive list. Writing of this kind requires extensive knowledge of subject area and domain expertise. Academic writing covers all branches of a study, and each discipline has its own set of writing conventions or style sheets, which we shall talk about in a while. The bedrock of all scholarly papers is the evidence of extra reading that you provide in support of your argument. The scientific studies are backed by facts, data, number, and statistics, while humanities are largely supported by quotations, arguments, and theories. Now let us look at how we cite and show this evidence of research in the body of our work. There are very strict rules and conventions in the manner in which we acknowledge these sources in our paper. One of the most important requirements of academic writing is the correct citing of these sources, and it is done through the insertion of footnotes or by compiling endnotes, which are also referred to as simply notes. It is very important to understand the difference between the two forms of citation in order to eliminate the confusion that it often causes in the mind of young scholars. Footnotes are situated at the bottom of the page and are used in order to elaborate the discussion which is taking place in the main composition. Endnotes, on the other hand, are placed all together in one place. They can be placed at the end of the essay, the research article, or a book chapter. Alternately, endnotes to different chapters in a book can also be put all together at the end of the book, clearly marked with the heading Notes or Notes to Chapter 1, and so on. Wherever you choose to place the notes, strict consistency should be maintained throughout the work. The placement of footnote is to facilitate quick access to information. A footnote is indicated at the end of the sentence by a numerical. The source of the line it denotes or the information it supplies is placed at the bottom of the page, the same page on which the text appears. The purpose of footnote is to convey more detailed explanations, more elaborate information, while endnotes provide citations for the sources that you have referred to in the course of writing your essay. The major difference between them is the usage, position, contents, and purpose. And we will be looking at these during the course of this lecture. Although the end purpose of both footnotes and endnote is the same, that is to provide additional knowledge and information on what is already articulated and explicated in the main body of the paper. Now let us ponder over the question of what exactly is that you are citing in your essay. These citations come from primary and secondary sources. Primary sources are the works of the author that you are researching and can be in the form of her books, manuscript, letters, journals, diaries, interviews, audio and video recordings. This material is in the writer's own hands and words. These materials provide you a credible access to the author's innermost ideas, and these are first-hand evidence of her thoughts and ideas. For example, suppose you are writing an essay on the early 20th century modernist novelist Virginia Woolf. The argument that you wish to build in your paper is that Woolf is an important feminist writer and that she is a champion of women's causes. For this, you would refer directly to a piece of work written by the author herself. Say her non-fictional work, A Room of One's Own. This work of the author is called the primary source, that is, a direct first-hand account of the writer's words and experiences. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are critical works of other authors on the subject that you are researching. This second-hand information that you get on an author in support of an idea or thesis that is developing in your mind, and you are looking for its validation through the works of other scholars. Secondary sources take the form of research articles, essays, books, theses, and dissertations. For example, you want to know what the feminist critic Elaine Showalter has to say about Virginia Woolf. You will look up the mention of the primary author, that is Virginia Woolf, in the seminal work of the secondary author. In that work, A Literature of Their Own, which is Showalter's work, and you can see that it is an appropriation of Woolf's title. Then you would look up the chapter she has written on Woolf to understand how highly Showalter regards Woolf as a feminist, what she has to say on the subject that you are researching. In order to reinforce your argument, you want to quote from Showalter, and you want to mention how she places Woolf historically in the female literary tradition. Showalter's work then becomes your secondary source. This information coming to you is gathered second-hand through the medium of another researcher. But you have to be very cautious and careful while you are choosing your secondary source. You have to rely on credible secondary sources whose authorship and information are beyond doubt and beyond question. So the primary and secondary readings are your sources, which you would mention in your notes and footnotes. There are various academic style sheets that lay out a prescribed format in which the references to the author, book, and publication are written. And this is strictly to be adhered to. It is imperative that the details mentioned in footnotes and endnotes are correct and complete in all aspects, and that there is thorough consistency in their arrangement. Inaccuracy in citation is unpardonable in the academic world, and it is a reflection of one's shoddy scholarship. In the publishing field, inconsistency in citation or deviation from the prescribed style are taken serious note of, and these are reasons alone for editors to reject the manuscript. Now let us see when the requirement for footnotes arise and when it is appropriate to use them. As far as possible, all the points relevant to the argument you are making should be provided in the paper itself. Why then are footnotes used at all? The major purpose of using a footnote is to split and slice off what, as a writer or a scholar, you deem to be supplemental information. Sometimes the argument that you have articulated in the main paper is lengthy and exhaustive, but you still feel the need to supplement what you have argued in the paper with added information. At the same time, you feel that if you added this information in the body of the paper, it would make the paper appear too wordy or too vociferous. It may seem to make your contention over pushy and argumentative. So you decide to put this information in the footnote. So when it does not seem possible to write down all aspects of a topic within the paper, and as researcher you feel the compulsive need to supply this additional information to bolster your argument, you take recourse to footnotes. It is not possible to convey every information, idea and sentiment in the body of the essay. For example, in my paper on the Victorian author, say George Eliot, I wish to put forward the contention that all of Eliot's novels are individual or personality centric. Eliot lays a lot of importance on the development of the character, their journey in life, the growth of the protagonist, and these would be the major thematic preoccupations of my paper. But I also wish to belabor this point by slipping in the additional information that George Eliot named all her books, barring two, after the names of its protagonist. Now, this note about almost all her novels being eponymous in nature will be put in the footnote, because even though it is an important point and serves to strengthen my argument, it is adding unnecessary volume to the paper. It is a fact that from her first 3 novellas to the last novel that she wrote, George Eliot named all her novels after the protagonists, and they are called, from her early short stories, Amos Barton, Mr. Gilfil's Story, Janet's Repentance, Adam Bede, Silas Marner, Romola, Felix Holt, Daniel Deronda, Theophrastus Such. These are all titles of her novels. But a reference of this kind, as you can see, would make the paper unwieldy and clunky. So by trimming this flab and removing the extra clutter from the main argument of the paper, while I'm letting the argument itself rest undisturbed in the text. The second purpose of footnote is to establish the authenticity of your research. It lends credence to your wide reading and gives evidence of your scholarship. It indicates your special area of interest and shows how the information you have sought has helped shape your ideas and argument. For example, if you are writing a paper on the composition history of the novels of, say, George Eliot again, you wish to draw the reader's attention to the writer's nervous temperament, her diffidence in attempting her fiction, But to cite these incidents, you have to authenticate your statement. This information on George Eliot cannot be conjured by you out of thin air. It has to be substantially corroborated by solid evidence. In order to substantiate your argument, you would pick up lines from her autobiography, but in absence of one, you would source her letters, her diary, her non-fictional writings. As a student or a researcher, you would provide the source of information in the footnotes to your paper, thereby providing evidence of extensive research you have carried out in the writing of your paper. Another purpose of footnote is to provide the reader a quick and easy accessibility to more information without interrupting her reading process. The reader can immediately check its authenticity and applicability without turning pages, with one quick glance at the bottom of the paper. So we now understand that footnotes provide additional knowledge material and information that elaborates and carries forward the contention that you are making in the paper, while endnotes contain all the details of sources, primary or secondary, that have been referenced in the body of the paper. Footnotes readily make the sources available. The reader merely has to look down the page to access the information rather than turn the pages, whereas she would have to rifle the pages to turn to the end of the essay or book chapter to look up the information in endnotes. Most journal publications prefer to have footnotes. Now that we have outlined the difference between footnotes and endnotes, let us consider the disadvantages, if any, of using footnotes. The scholar has to be very discerning about what matter she marks as footnote. The information there should be in sync with the point argued in the paper and gel well with the main idea. It should carry forward the ideas articulated in the paper. Too many examples of anecdotes and extraneous information clutter the footnotes. The plethora of explanations cited in the footnote may also prove to be a distraction for the reader. Her absorption in the information may get tiresome, thus disrupting her readership and affecting her concentrative powers. There are certain guidelines for compiling notes and footnotes. The first point that you should attend to is footnote and pagination. One has to be very careful that the length of the printed page containing footnotes is equal to that of other printed pages. You have to avoid the usage of too many footnotes. A large number of footnotes discourage readers from reading the text, and as far as possible, the matter should be accommodated in the text itself. The scholar should be careful not to provide notes for accepted scholarship, thereby crowding the paper. However, if too many footnotes are unavoidable, attempt should be made to accommodate them in a single paragraph and a single footnote instead of a number of them. Let us look at the usage of footnote, where and how they are placed in the paper. Footnote should appear on the same page on which the reference to it has been cited. It is always appended to the end of the textual sentence, after all punctuation, parentheses, quotations, except in case of a dash or a colon. It should never appear after the author's name. The footnotes on manuscript page may not appear on the same page of printed matter. Therefore, at the time of proofreading, it should be carefully checked and edited. Similarly, if a footnote is later deleted, the serial number should be changed and corrected. However, when you are writing your paper on an electronic device in the Word format, footnoting is a foolproof process. You just have to click on References, then insert Footnote option. Then all footnotes appear sequentially, and even when you delete a footnote, it automatically orders itself. Now, let us sum up part 1 of our lecture, which has dealt with footnotes and references. In this video, we have covered a very important aspect of academic writing. We have learned to distinguish academic writing from non-academic writing. The academic writing we saw is formal, cohesive, structured piece of writing which requires great deal of objectivity, while non-academic writing we saw can be informal, personal and subjective. We also looked at how non-academic writing acquires a fluid identity with the example of novelist Hilary Mantel and Philippa Gregory. They are kind of crossover genres, medium of writing. Secondly, we learned about primary and secondary sources. Primary sources, author's works in her own word and hand. Secondary sources, another author's work on the primary author that you are researching. We learn to make distinction between the endnotes and notes, which are also called footnotes. I beg your pardon, endnotes, which are also called notes, and footnotes. Their placing in the text. Footnotes come at the bottom of the page, notes or endnotes come at the end of the chapter, the research article or the book. We discussed in this paper the necessity, purpose and usage of notes and footnotes. Thank you.